Right, joining us now is the man himself. He's got his brand new book out today. I love the title, and I like the content even more. Why We Fight, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Dr. Sebastian Gorka is with us. How are you, my friend? This book is must-read for everybody. And how are you? Good to see you.
Very excited, Sean. Thanks for having me. I didn't think this title would be as appropriate as it is after the last 72 hours. But, man, we are in a fight right now for the future of the Republic.
It is a fight for the future of the Republic. The one thing I love about you, and I've come to know you very well, is that you are a patriot. And you understand evil in our time, evil abroad, the need to defend and keep America strong. And you understand the political aspects of it as well, because if you elect the wrong people, then we're going to have policies of appeasement again, and that renders us more vulnerable.
Just look at the last 8 years. What did we have? We had a commander-in-chief who started his presidency with an apology tour, and then he blamed all the bad things in the world on America. What resulted? The rise of ISIS, Russia invading its neighbor, Chinese remilitarization. At the end of the Obama administration, just one metric. Take politics out of it for a second. We had 65 million refugees in the world. That's more than we had at the end of World War II. When you don't have American leadership, the world is a more dangerous place. Now that's over, thanks to Donald Trump. Now we have a commander-in-chief who believes that evil exists. Read his Warsaw speech. Listen to what he says about ISIS, about what the Chinese are doing.
Listen to what he said at the UN last week.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So that's why I wrote Why We Fight. But you're absolutely correct. We have domestic issues here. Evil exists not just outside our borders. Look what they did to that godly man, Brett Kavanaugh, in the last 14 days. A man who had probably the cleanest, most spotless record in American public life, goes from being a upstanding federal judge to a mass rapist. They will use every tool because they lost the election, and that's why the next 30 days are so important, Sean.
It means everything. And look, everything's riding on this. I don't know. If you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have leaned on the side that history would win out, because the party that wins the White House usually ends up losing seats in a midterm election. It's only not happened 3 times. You've only picked up seats 3 times in the last 100 years. The last was after 2001 and the attack on
September 11th.
September 11th.
Right.
But there's so much at stake here, and that is what literally jumps off the page as I'm reading through your book, that we better defeat America's enemies, and we better do it without apologies. But Dr. Gorka, we don't get to do that if we're not in power.
Right. We have to take very seriously this concept that the left has been taken over by the radicals. Think about the fact that JFK would not be allowed into the Democrat Party today. A hardcore anti-communist, strong on national security, he wouldn't be allowed into the DNC. What do we have? We have the crazies. We have the Ocasio-Cortezes. We have the Maxine Waters in control, who have made a pact with the devil. They have said very simply, the ends justify the means. We want power, and we will use any tool. Well, guess who used that philosophy in the past? That philosophy drives to the labor camps, it drives to the gulags, and it drives to the death camps. Whether you're a right-wing extremist, whether you're a fascist, or whether you're a communist, that's the philosophy. And we've got to stop that, Sean. We have to stay true to the principles of the Republic.
You talk in the book about a will to win,
Yes.
and again, the title, Why We Fight, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. And here's what we can't have anymore. And you talk about the will to win. You talk about will. If you go back to Vietnam, we lost 58,000 brave Americans, and we allowed that war to become politicized.
Yes.
And we pulled out.
Yeah.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, we pull out. We even give dates of our withdrawal, and we lost nearly 6,000 kids, and so many others come back without their arms, their legs, and their faces disfigured, fighting for their country. We cannot commit American troops ever again unless we are willing to win the war. If we're not willing to do what it takes to win the war, then we ought not get involved ever, period, unless we have to. You have to win these wars, or else don't start them. Don't be involved in them.
So my book is about 2 things. It's about all the threats we face as a country. So whether it's ISIS, Russia, or China. But the second part is much more important. This is the one you're hitting on. It's, do we have the will to defeat our enemies? Because Vietnam is the great example. We were the most powerful nation in the world, and a bunch of guys with wooden sticks and rusty rifles defeat us. How's that possible? Because we lost the war at home, because we allowed the left to undermine our will to win. And one of the most important things is the individual will to win. In addition to the analyses of the threats, I have 4 vignettes of American heroes. I go back to the Barbary Wars 200 years ago. I talk about a Korean hero, a chesty puller. I talk about a man who spent 6.5 years as a naval aviator in the Hanoi Hilton. But the last story is very, very important for what we are seeing right now, and it's Whittaker Chambers. Most kids have no idea who Whittaker Chambers is. This is a man who was Kavanaugh'd before Kavanaugh was born. In 1948, the first live televised Senate hearing was a man called Whittaker Chambers, who had been a communist agent of the Soviets, who went on record saying, hey, I'm no longer a communist, but I need America to know where the communists are in the government, including Al-Jahis. He was a guy who was working for the Soviets. What happened to this man who stood up for the truth? They accused him of everything. Cheating on his wife. They accused him of the death, of being responsible for the death of his brother. None of it was true. But what did he do? He had the will to fight. He stood up for the truth, just as Justice Kavanaugh did. So, Sean, here's a really. But here's the scary thing: the Democrats have done this before. Don't be surprised at what they did to Kavanaugh. They've done it 70 years ago.
They have done it every election in my lifetime. They play the race card, the gender card. You know, they divide America: old versus young, rich versus poor, black versus white. This is the identity politics which they have mastered, and I keep playing them in their own words. It's not like I'm making it up. Quick break. We'll come back more with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Why We Fight, his new book, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere, Hannity.com. All right, as we continue with Dr. Sebastian Gorka's brand new book is out, Why We Fight, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. By the way, it's up on Hannity.com, Amazon.com, and bookstores everywhere. There are people like you and me in the public eye. I know we're very similar. You don't care what people say about you. I don't give a flying rip what people say about me. It's all been said. Right. There's nothing that hasn't been said.
Well, that's because you stand up to them, right?
Well, and I have the ability to fight back, but I don't even waste my time half the time fighting back because there's too many other important issues to deal with. You are driven with a passion to defend this country, a passion, a love of MAGA, making America great. You know, since the first day I knew you, I knew there was something different about you.
That's very kind. There's a reason, and it's the first chapter of my book. It's my family background. My parents lived on the wrong side of the Iron Curtain. My parents, as children, lived through a fascist Nazi dictatorship and then suffered through what? The communist takeover of their country. Not only that, my father, at the age of 18, created a secret Christian student underground organization to resist the communist takeover of his country. What happened? He was betrayed from the West, a guy called Kim Philby. Look him up, one of the biggest traders of the 20th century. As a result, he was, at the age of 20, arrested, tortured by the secret police, and then given a life sentence. 2 years in solitary, 2 years down a prison coal mine, only later to be liberated from a political prison by the Hungarian Revolution. He made it to the West with a 17-year-old daughter of a fellow prison mate, through the minefield into a refugee camp. They were married, and those are my parents. This is in my gene code. People ask me, when did you become a conservative? When your parents have lived through that, it's in your blood. And as a result, I don't care what they say about me, because as we said in the White House, when the worst attacks were coming, we had a motto: you only take flack when you're over the target.
Yeah, well, we're over the target a lot, so I guess we're taking a whole ton of flack. It's been an honor of mine over the last couple of years to get to know you and become your friend.
Thank you.
The book is so well written, and I got to be honest, you won't put it down, and there's a lot that I'm learning about it, and I cover this stuff every day, and I appreciate that you took the time to write it. I hope everyone will go to bookstores, Amazon.com. It's now in bookstores everywhere, Hannity.com. We have a big display on our website. It's called Why We Fight, and Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, you're a good man, sir. God bless you. The book is phenomenal. Thanks for being with us.
God bless you and your listeners, Sean.